Good afternoon, everyone. The National Caucus met this morning to discuss a press release issued last night about an allegation of an historic comment made by the Honourable Simon Bridges towards the Honourable Jackie Dean. The caucus was concerned with the content of the press release and the process by which it was issued. The caucus moved a motion for a vote of no confidence in the leader, and that motion was successful. As a result, Judith Collins is no longer the leader of the National Party, and according to party convention, I have assumed the role of interim leader until the caucus meets again on Tuesday to choose a new leader. On behalf of the caucus, I'd like to thank the Honourable Judith Collins for her valuable service to the party. I'm happy to take questions. There is always a sadness when there's something like this, but you know, we get up and lift our eyes to the horizon and get on with our work. I'm sorry? I'm not about to discuss that. That will be for caucus to discuss next Tuesday. My job at the moment is to shepherd and guide the caucus through to their leadership decision on Tuesday. I haven't contemplated that because it's more important I shepherd the caucus through to this really important process. I'm not going to speak about the allegation. The Honourable Jackie Dean and Simon Collins will be making statements shortly around that, but there was concern around the process of the issuing of the press release last night. That was a concern for caucus, which is why we're standing here in front of you today. I don't discuss conversations I have with colleagues. There was a range of views last night. I can't discuss what happens in caucus.
I'm saying your colleagues, how did they react last night? Were they shocked?
I don't discuss conversations I have with colleagues either, Barry, actually. Yes. Sorry, I will take over here, Henry.
Could you please spell out how the National Party board was approved and whether they actually were told, and if it was actually fully unanimous, whether it wasn't that those remarks that they were told?
Look, I'm not going to reveal discussions with in detail with the National Party Board, but the National Party Board were engaged several times yesterday. Those discussions are with the National Party Board to discuss.
Can you talk about how damaging this is to the party, either in a bit of a sentiment and articulate what brings to the party?
We're really looking for our new leadership team on Tuesday. To bring us back to focus on the exact things that you're mentioning, the things that matter to New Zealand. As we are in the middle of a pandemic, we want to be bringing new thinking to the room, new thoughts, and that's going to be our focus under our new leadership team on Tuesday.
What's the message going to be to the MPs as they consider who is going to lead the party from Tuesday?
My advice to them would be that this is a business for the party. It is a business for MPs, and we should be judicious and diligent in how we make those sort of decisions.
What do you know about a relatively, I suppose, quiet? Do you want candidates to be proactive, I suppose, positive and constructive in this contest?
The process of selection is a decision that was made by caucus, and I won't reveal it here, but of course I would expect the best face and the best candidates and the best talent to come forward and to show that talent in this contest.
What involvement did you have in discussions with Simon Bridges about this issue yesterday?
I'm not going to discuss conversations that I have with other colleagues, but I have been engaged in the process as the Deputy Leader. Judith had an allegation that she needed to attend to. It was a serious allegation, and so she took advice and made the best decision she could last night. That was one. I'm not going to discuss those sort of things, those conversations that I have with colleagues. I'm not going to discuss that. It was a challenge. You'll understand the nature of the allegation. It was a challenging time, and the best decision on the facts as were understood last night was made last night. Yes. Jackie Dean's going to make a statement shortly. I'll let her reveal her engagement and what her position is.
So in your view, it wasn't a serious allegation, in your view?
It was a serious allegation.
So, Reti, as a doctor, how frustrating is it for you that you're having to come and talk about this rather than in your area of expertise?
This will be a piece of work that the new leadership will work towards to make sure that, as was commented over here, that we focus our minds and our attention and our talent on the things that matter to New Zealanders. Yes, this is not our best day, but as I said, we will raise our eyes to the sky and get on with the work that we're tasked to do. I don't comment on what happened in caucus.
Is this the end of the matter as far as Jackie Dean and Simon Bridges and Judith Collins are concerned? Or is this going to continue to be prosecuted one way or another?
So Simon and Jackie will make statements to that effect shortly, but an allegation was raised and we took it very seriously.
Let's have the last couple of questions, please.
Thoughtful decision making is always good, and there was a collective will for next Tuesday to be the best time for all of us. We need to take great care to make the best decision that we can.
Is there any, what are the rules for this contest?
Oh, I won't discuss that. It was discussed in caucus, but that's for caucus to understand. That's for caucus to understand. What I am telling you is that on Tuesday we will have a leadership discussion, and by the end of that day I'm expecting we'll have a new leadership team.
As leader of the National Party, what's your message to voters about the future of the party?
My message to voters is that you can have confidence in us, that we have a track record, that we have talent in this caucus, and that we will have a refreshed leadership team on Tuesday. And that is my message to voters. What did you say? Last question, yes.
Will Judith Collins be allowed to take part in caucus meetings, and will Todd Muller be able to come back to caucus meetings?
Judith Collins is a valuable member of the caucus team. She will be part of our caucus. Todd Miller's position is as it has always been. That will be for the new leadership to decide if there's any changes to that. Okay, thank you. I don't discuss conversations I have with colleagues. Thank you very much.
Kia ora koutou, good afternoon. This morning, the National Party caucus had a vote of no confidence in Judith Collins. In large part, it was due to a press release around me issued last night that just wasn't correct. I want to let you know what happened. 5 or 6 years ago, the National Party caucus had a full day at Premier House. At lunchtime, I was out talking with a number of members of Parliament, and at some point Jackie Dean joined that. We discussed our wives, our children. I can remember talking about the fact I have 2 boys and I wanted a girl, and I engaged in some old wives' tales about that and how to have a girl, and I entirely accept and regretful of that day because I acknowledge that some of what I said was clearly inappropriate. Sometime after that, Bill English, who at that time was Deputy Prime Minister, called me into his office and discussed this. He made clear that Jackie Dean was offended, deeply offended by what had been said. I was unaware of that, but very regretful, and apologised for that and learned a valuable lesson at that time. I then went and apologised fulsomely to Jackie Dean, and she accepted that apology. I regret what I said. I wasn't aware of its impact on Jackie. Now I have certainly been made aware of its significant effect, and that's a really, as I say, valuable lesson for me. I share her desire for a modern, inclusive workplace and work environment. And again, I've today offered her my apology for what happened several years ago. On that note, I'm very happy to answer any questions. I don't think it's helpful to give you the words, but there's been media comment, and it's pretty much on the money.
Not helpful to say what it was because you recognise it's deeply offensive?
I recognise it was inappropriate.
How does the National Party go forward from here when you clearly hate it?
Go that far. I think what I would say is, it's been a tough time. We had a poor election, and I think the vaccinated economy, how that's going to look in terms of debt and inflation, these big issues facing New Zealand's health, education. We haven't done, I don't think, a good enough job on I haven't decided that. I want to consider that over the next day or two. I think today in particular, I'm an older, possibly wiser guy than I was certainly 5 or 6 years ago, but even a couple of years ago with a National Party. So that's something I'm which I said it was a desperate move. I stand by that. That's my view. And she shouldn't have sent out that press release.
Was she trying to curtail any leadership led by you?
I think there's no doubt we're in a situation where the polls tell a story, where for many years Nationals polling and support from New Zealanders always had a 4, sometimes even a 5 on it. At the moment, we're not breaking a 3. And, I think the buck stops on that. Yes, it's a team issue, but with the leader. I'm considering this. The reality is, despite the media commentary, there wasn't a vacancy. I was genuine. I was genuine in my clear statements to you and to others about not having an intention to stand where things were at. That's changed. I'm going to consider it. I do think I'm older and a bit wiser. I think I have a at this time, but let's think that through. I'm going to think that through over the next day or two. He has made a statement, and I don't think it's for me to to get into that. Are you, Richard?
Judith Collins should stand again at the next election, as she has said she would, given the level of division that surrounded her leadership.
I've made it clear this morning, both in my brief comments to the media really and elsewhere, that I didn't have confidence in Judith Collins. I was, let's put it euphemistically, very unhappy with the press release last night. And in the end, those are matters for her. I will acknowledge that Judith has and did take over the National Party at a difficult time in the age of COVID, and she has been responsible for some rebuilding of the National Party that will be helpful to the team in the future.
What do you say about the state of the National Party if you were rolled as leader and then possibly come back as leader?
Well, there's a few examples of that around the world. I'm not suggesting that's necessarily going to happen. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We've only had a vacancy this morning. I'm being as upfront as I can, which is that I'm going to consider it over the next day or two. Look, I work with anyone, I think, within reason. I could work with various coalition partners if that was the privilege that National had, and we're a wee way from that at this time, and I could work with all of my caucus colleagues. Yep.
How do you think Judith Collins' tenure as leader will be remembered?
Look, I think it will be remembered as a difficult time, as a time where perhaps weren't as on top of the issues that matter to New Zealanders and the solutions as perhaps we could have been, but it was also a time of rebuilding, and Judith deserves some credit for that. Well, I was surprised. There had been a very brief, very poor process from Judith Collins, where I had not been informed of what the actual matter was. And so when that press release came out, as I say, to say the least, I was very surprised.
The press release says that the board supported the move unanimously. Is that your understanding? Have you talked to the board about
That's not my understanding. My understanding is that effectively they considered it as a matter for the leader of the National Party. It wasn't one they had a position on. I'll take a couple more. I'll go to Jenna and then Jane.
Did Shane Reti threaten you on Tuesday?
I'm not going to get into characterising discussions. Jane.
What was the discussion?
I'm not going to get into characterising discussions with colleagues. Private discussions stay private. Jane.
Did he threaten to take the story to Cameron Slater and Simon Martin?
I'm not going to characterise discussions. What is absolutely true, though, is I had, before the press release, no knowledge of the specific matters that Judith Collins had been talking about. That said, let me be very, very clear. I've told you what happened, and I'm regretful about that. I've apologised now to Jackie a number of times, and I'm sincere in those apologies. Jane.
You talked about a brief and a full process. Can you outline what discussions you were with Judith Collins before that media release went out in terms of natural process and natural justice?
I don't think it's helpful to go through the minute details. The reality is that would take to do, but I've made quite clear to you, I thought it was a poor process. I thought it lacked any sort of due process coming from a lawyer. Given where things are at, we're in a situation where the leader of the National Party this morning was Judith Collins, isn't. We've had a vote of no confidence. We're now in a process of thinking that through and how we best position for New Zealanders in the future. I'm not going to kind of ply over old dead wood, if you like, or material. I want to leave that where it is, frankly.
Does Judith Collins need to leave Parliament? Does caucus want her out?
Look, I've answered that, and yeah, pretty clearly.
You're sounding very measured and quite leaderly. What should we read into that?
Well, I'm glad you say so. But if I can say, I've been the leader of the National Party. We all know that. It's a tough job, and I will acknowledge, although we had many, many differences, Judith Collins in doing that role and giving it her all. I do think I've learnt for it. but I do know the toll it takes. And I do know that National's building off a very low base. On the recent polls, there is a huge amount of work to do for whoever becomes the leader of the National. More from Luke, and then I'm going to leave it. Luke.
As if you were to do you have confidence with the National Party board, given what's transpired in the last 12 to 24 hours?
It's been a very difficult period. They've had very difficult issues. I think it is true that in terms of the President, some of those issues we've repeated mistakes a number of times. At the end of the day, I am not today the leader of the National Party, and I think the new leader of the National Party will have to think through how they best deal with the board and the current President. Thanks very much.